Jesus was constantly inviting us to leave ideas or realities in search of a future that sometimes we can't even see for ourselves. He was always inviting us to defect from those ideas or practices that not only dehumanize others but ourselves, and into new places of an authentic self, of being more fully human. You can't put new wine into old wineskins. You need new wineskins. Old wineskins, when you try to put new ideas or a different you, like, it won't hold it. You have to think about letting go of the old wineskin and moving to grab a different type of container. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world but to lose his life? If you want to know what it's like to truly live, you must first die. Lay down your mat and follow me. Come out of your tree. Sell all your possessions. Step out of the boat. Wash the inside of your cup. Remove the plank from your eye. He was prolific at invitation, at inviting people out of what used to be and what could be. Wooing, calling, loving people towards a radical, different way of being human. Jesus was about reframing and about inviting, and then Jesus was also about resisting. And this is where it gets a little bumpy, I think. Reframing and inviting don't get you killed. It doesn't put a target on your back. It doesn't get you murdered by the state. But the minute that reframing and inviting evolves into some type of resistance, organized or otherwise, the minute you subvert or protest the authority and the impact of that authority, the minute you refuse to fall in line or parrot the narrative of the empire, the minute your solidarity with the oppressed creates chaos or embarrassment for those who are in power, that's a whole other thing, right? Jesus didn't get murdered because he was, some first century version of Dr. Phil or Oprah. That's not what happened. By the way, turning the other cheek, walking the extra mile, giving not only the coat on your back, but your undergarment, protesting and shutting down a public execution of a sex worker who was being stoned, the healing of someone on the Sabbath, feeding the 5,000, turning water into wine. There's this book called The Powers That Be that was written by Walter Wink, and he writes how these weren't just feel-good stories. These were stories of creative, disruptive, subversive, outrageous acts of theater, or just outrageous acts in and of themselves to defy the religious and the political establishments of Jesus' world. They were attempts at upending violence and greed and power and to reduce them to these sort of Jesus feel-good moments. I think is or proof that Jesus was somehow God. That's reductionist at worst and sloppy at best, because in the end, it not only dismisses what was given up for him, but also the people that came after him and people who have come after him throughout the last 2,000 years that ultimately paid the price with their suffering in their life. Reframing, inviting, and resisting. So I discovered a new theologian and philosopher this past week. Her name is Verna Dozier. Maybe you've heard of her before, but she was really prolific in the Episcopalian church back in the 70s through the 90s as a theologian and an activist. But she writes this. She says, the important question to ask is not what do you believe, but what difference does it make that you believe? Does the world come nearer to the dream of God because of what you believe?